It was the first of times. It was the best of times. It was the times that Jonathan and I knew very early in our career. I suppose we didn't even have a career yet. That we wanted to be filmmakers. We knew that we wanted to be filmmakers at one point, and we had a film project that had to have been our first. We've worked on many projects, many together and many not together. But Jonathan and I think. Oh, and he's here, by the way. Hello, Jonathan.
Oh, hi. Hello.
Just
hello.
in case, I think
hello.
people weren't believing me when I was talking about to you.
Always good to let them know I'm really here.
In film, we never want to film anyone clean because that looks sloppy, lazy. Oh, they didn't have the other actors in the room. They just shot them at separate days. I didn't want you to think...
Like, oh, did you only have access to them for 5 minutes?
Right. I didn't want them to think that I could only afford you for just a little bit of time and I was pretending like you were here and you weren't here.
Right.
This is how filmmakers think, ladies and gentlemen. And you don't start thinking like this on your first project. Your first project is supposed to be shit. That's what it's for. You have to make doo-doo. And Jonathan and I took big doo-doos when we were very young. Mm-hmm. And Jonathan, how old were you?
Still take some doo-doos today.
I take a few doo-doo here and there. Let me tell you, I have a doo-doo or two I could tell you about. But let me tell you, when did you know that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
You know, I'd been... there's a moment that you know, but there's also like a pattern that you now recognize. Like I was always, performing and making stuff and making little videos. But then it was like at the end of high school that I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That is the thing that makes me the most happy. and as we've characterized me as like a very logical person and everything. And I have to admit that I had and I have like kind of proceeded through my life with prioritizing a logical approach rather than incorporating feelings. And this was one of the outbursts of feelings. Like I was always like, well, I'll do what makes sense. I'll do the logical thing. I'll do the orderly thing. And this is, I come from a military family, et cetera. And I've talked a little bit about that, but I just hadn't incorporated much of like, well, what makes me happy? Like, what do I feel really, rather than like, what am I interested in? Because I'm interested in a lot of things. But it was like the end of high school where I was like, I want to go to school for acting, because I realized like that's the only thing that like actually makes me happy.
Wow. And
why haven't I had a feeling as a criteria before?
Well, because I don't think we're necessarily raised to go for our dreams like that. It's funny. It's weird.
And that was my sitch, but that happened.
It's funny because when we're very young, I think our generation got the Mr. Rogers and Barney era where you can be anything you want. And then there's an age where that's kind of washed out of us. I want to say around middle school, it's like, but in reality, you're going to be one of these 10 things.
Right. And you just don't know what to believe then.
And you're just like, okay, well, and this doesn't exist, and there's all these other religions, and it's a very confusing time. And I think the safest thing to do when other cultures clash as you get older and enter adulthood is to just conform to what is proven to be safe.
Right.
I have a lot of friends and family who just do what they. I think I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but I don't get the sense they're doing what they're doing because they feel like it is fun and enjoyable, and like they're getting they're coming from doing it. No, not the way that I come from what I do. But I see that a lot of my life. I've worked a lot of my life. I was that person. So maybe I'm just speaking on behalf of myself from that chapter of my life, and I'm projecting it onto other people that I grew up with. That could be a possibility. But I think what I mean to say is that when you get wrapped up in office life and domestic, the way that I did about 6-7 years ago, when I was working a very, very 9-to-5 kind of life, I remember thinking that I was happy doing what I did. And I think in hindsight, looking back, I was happy doing the best version of what I had to do, which was get a day job.
Right.
This is the best because it was a really nice day job, but I was still in a cubicle. I still had to wear a tie to work, and I still had a boss to impress and deadlines to.
Right.
I still had, and you can apply that to what I do now. But like the who I'm impressing are people I want to impress, and the tasks I have to do in order to impress them is something I want to do. And so, I think once I started working in entertainment full time, I realized, oh my God, this is the day job that I want. But see, the thing is, I've always considered entertainment not a day job, not even the possibility of being a day job. I've always considered it to be sort of like a pipe dream or a hobby that was just really fun to play with. You know what I mean? Like I've always figured, well, I have to do something I hate to support the thing I love. I think that's a logic that a lot of people have. I have to do something I hate to support what I love. Like, why not do something you love to support itself because you love doing it? I don't know. So and I feel like a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, humanitarians, people who are very self-driven in their own cause or in a cause that they are equally on the front line of, kind of have that same mentality of I do what I love because it supports doing what I love. You know what I mean? And rather than like, well, you got to grind the gears and do what you hate doing so you can support doing your hobby that you like. You know, it's a different kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was sort of raised with that, the latter. I think that now that I work
and like it depends on your situation. Like you may very well need to because you don't have any kind of runway or safety net at all.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, having no safety net is a terrifying feeling, and I think that it's one of the most discouraging things out there.
Yeah. Like when I was going out to college, like at least I had a family I could move back in with or something.
Right.
Like yeah. And some people don't have that.
I just started watching that Netflix film. I saw I Am Mother. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Very similar. It has very, very, very strong plot elements to this whole moving out and running away from home and trusting the mom you grew up with versus the mom of the society wanting to take you out from your parents' house. And it's a very interesting film. I watched it and I don't know how to make up my mind yet.
Well, fuck.
So I don't know if I should recommend it. And if it sucks, I'm sorry. I haven't decided if it's a good movie or not. But it's a very interesting topic. And I think that sort of getting older and discovering who you are is a very important element in life. I think everyone can agree. And I think when we found out, the filmmaking makes me happy. I think you might have at an earlier age realized you can make a living off of it, or at least tried aiming. Because I really never tried to make a living fully off of. I never thought that was a possibility to do film work or writing or acting, anything entertainment related, as a living. And I always kind of just settled on it being a hobby. And I think very, very recently, within the last 4 years, I kind of realized, I can make a living off it. That being said, I think that making a piece of cinema or a piece of video or a piece of media, whatever it is, one of the most gratifying things. It's something that's rooted very, very deep down in me from when I was a teenager. Even younger than that, I didn't know I wanted to be a filmmaker or a video creator. I knew that it was the thing that made me the happiest, though. Like that, I knew. How old were you? How old were you when you said you made your first thing?
I mean, the first stuff was as soon as we had a video camera, but I think like 8th grade and 9th grade projects, like where I'm using Legos to do stop motion.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that like everyone's probably like fooled around with making fun videos and stuff, but like how did you feel about it? Were you like making a good version of it, like, and doing it better is actually a passionate experience for you, and like being proud of it is the most proud that you've ever been of anything you've created? Like how it's
right.
It's a kind of a familiar act, but then an unfamiliar feeling about the act. Like you know it when you feel it, where it's like, whoa, that was my favorite feeling. That was my favorite feeling.
It is. It's
to date. I hadn't hit puberty.
That was a fun feeling. I remember I had a similar, like just being, it was very gratifying to work so hard on something that you can watch and enjoy.
Yeah.
And I thought
that makes you laugh. You're like, oh my God, am I making myself laugh? Like, what the fuck?
I think I was always a very arrogant filmmaker because I can't remember a time where I knew in that time period that this was shit. I think I was proud of everything I made.
That was a question I have for you.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, when did you start to think that your work was good? And then has that point advanced with you kind of in proximity to the present? Like, is it like basically starting 2 years ago is when my work got good? And is that what you said when you were 16 and 20 and 20, and 20, you know what I mean? Like,
can I be frank with you?
Yeah.
I thought up front from the very first thing I made that it was fucking amazing. I was let me go. I was I want to say I was about 11 years old. Well, no, it was even younger. I started doing stop motion when I was 7. You believe that? 7 years old, I was doing stop motion.
That's pretty.
My dad was a software engineer, and he got this thing called the Quick Cam. It was by QuickTime. It was a orb that was in like a pyramid holder. I can't quite describe it very well, but it was like it was like one of the first webcam things. But it had a Apple software that was very, very easy for apparently even a kid to use, because I remember the interface being so simple, and you could click and make a frame and then move your object slightly and click and make a frame. And then it would just play it for you. And it was the easiest way to, so all that, my only limitations were time and my toys and daylight, because the sun would shift obviously throughout the day and I didn't, but, so sometimes I'd make these stop motions at night, but I would just have, it was a way for me to take my action figures and bring them to life that much more. You know what I mean? Like to make movies with them and to see them like destroy each other. And then sometimes they would melt and turn into,
destroy each other.
Yeah. And like sometimes they would melt and I would turn them into Play-Doh. It's like, what frame do I replace them with the Play-Doh version and melt that, and it just taught me a lot about patience. It taught me a lot about the gratitude of constructing something and then looking at it from afar and really appreciating it for its completion and finding entertainment in something that I myself have made. It's actually the entertainment version of masturbation. Like you're enjoying something that you made and no one else really is stimulating you in that moment, but you're being stimulated.
But how to masturbate for others? How
to masturbate for others? Well, that's just called face down, ass up. Just giving, you're making entertainment. That's what I do for my fans. No, I think that making something that you think is something that you enjoy. It's like I wouldn't trust a chef who makes food that they don't think is delicious.
Right. Yeah.
And when I was young, I knew, like, I also had a lot of positive reinforcement. My dad and my grandfather, they were both very creative men, they'd still watch these stop motions and they would always like make sure that I knew that they were really good.
Aww.
And that always gave me encouragement. My dad primarily encouraged me to do video work. My dad was always into digital whatever. And, in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, video production, but even in the late 90s, video production was starting to to really boom more. And I remember my dad's office had a video production department for, I don't know what the fuck for. Now that I look back at it, it's like, why did they had a studio with a green screen? And I don't know what it was for, but my dad was friends with the video production coordinator there. God damn. And the guy said, hey, if your son ever wants to, you can come in and like shoot something on the weekend and, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
So my dad was like, great. So my dad brought me in and he introduced me to the guy. I remember his name was Eric. I don't know why the fuck I remember that. I must have been like 10 years old. And I remember thinking like, Eric was the nicest guy. He was like, welcome to the studio. And he was like Willy Wonka to me because I walk in this place. I felt like Charlie Bucket. I walk all these toggles and this green screen and all these ring lights in the 90s. Can you believe it? And yeah. And I just remember thinking like this, I've arrived. Part of me felt like I've arrived. Like this, I knew that this was a pivotal moment for me because I've always, ever since a young age, I've always been a movie and TV kid. My dad, I always watched a lot of TV with my parents. We went and saw a movie every weekend. So to be in a place where, like, I knew what this was. I knew this is where they make videos. Right. I didn't know to what capacity. For all I knew, could be where they shot Titanic. I was in a studio, right? And that was very exciting to me. So anyways, the whole point of this Roundabout story is that this was I think, arguably the first thing I actually ever shot in my life. I did it, and I wrote a script for it. I wrote a script the night before my dad had me. I got a notebook and I wrote, it's pretty fucking goddamn similar to looking like what the scripts that I write today. Like it was like this character, da 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 da, that character, da 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 da. Each line of dialogue all the way down. But I knew what it was a news report. I played a news anchor, and it was I think it was the end of the world. And my dad, I honestly forget what happened, but there's some mob that happened. We just basically took advantage of the green screen. Suddenly we're in China and there's a mob in China and everything's on fire because we can add flame effects to this and that. And there was the apocalypse, right? And my dad's head came off and we wrapped a green screen around his head and he ran around as like a headless body. We got that shit done on a VHS, took that home, and every time the family came over, I popped that bitch in the VCR and we watched that. I made them watch this movie. I bet you my dad could probably dig it up if he looks hard enough somewhere. But yeah, that was the first thing actually. And I think I want to say I was around 10 or 11 years old. And
hopefully we can get that.
I was fucking proud of that. And then, of course, I didn't do video work until I was like in high school, and then we started having to do it I remember a lot of our teachers were assigning us projects because of that. Was it middle school,
true,
high school?
Yeah, it was always like, and then the third option for this project is you can do a video of,
right.
historical whatever, you know, John Adams and such, and you're like, yes, that one.
I remember, yeah, exactly. That one. Everyone wanted that one. I had a lot of teachers who gave us options like that too, but I remember I had this one teacher, Ms. Davies. She was the young, cool, hot teacher, and I always wonder what she looks like now. I'm curious to know who she is now. Because
probably beaten down by the public school system.
Probably. She's got in at a young age. She can't be on 2 feet.
Make it past 35.
I know. But no, she, in all fairness, she was an amazing teacher. But I remember her being the one who was like, I'm the one you could tell me anything. I'm the one who you could. And he was a science teacher, and she would try and like explain science in like relatable middle school terms that we would understand. Like, yeah, you know, like friction, you know, what's the opposite of friction? Like slick. And how do you get slick stuff? And then one kid was like, lube. And she's like, yeah, lube has no friction. And it's like, okay, we get it. You're the cool teacher. Like, oh, she made a lube reference. Anyways, I'm just painting a picture of who she is. One day we're trying, I forget what subject we were on in this semester, but she says, y'all are going to have to, and she was kind of just she's a young blonde, like surfer, almost like not hippie. She looked like someone from Santa Cruz. Right. Anyways.
That is funny because you're like, you respect the effort, but you're also like, there's something that I felt like repels you about the trying too hard or something.
A little bit.
It's like you imagine how dramatic they see themselves. I don't know. I mean, we can go deep into this character.
No. She is a character worth going deep into. I feel like I've always
how do I reach these kids?
I feel like I've always kind of been very sensitive to culty behavior, and I feel like that is a form of culty behavior. I feel like being this because it's like elephant in the room. We're not addressing the fact that this is kind of a show she's putting on, but right. But we're all just kind of feeding into it.
It's like who told you to be this way for that purpose?
You know,
you're not looking at us right now. You're not like, yeah, right.
I've taken a few acting classes since I've moved to LA, and it's a similar situation. And culty behavior, I think it's like in our DNA because it exists. And I've like churches and other things. Anyways, this is a whole other subject. But anyways, Ms. Davies, let's go back to her. Okay. She's cool. Everyone likes her. And in all fairness, she was an amazing teacher. I learned so much from her science class.
Good.
She put everything in very relatable terms. Anyways, that being said, she had us do a project, and there was no other option. We all had that. She put us into groups, and she says, find whoever in your group has a video camera and go. And for their younger viewers out there, it was a tape. Like, if you had a camera, you were someone, or your parents had money, or a camera just to record something with. If you really wanted a photo, you had to go down to that fucking Walgreens and get a disposable piece of shit and snap 17 pictures and wind it up, and then you're done. Wait an hour and get it back.
Exactly.
That was so whoever in the group had the camera, they probably were the more wealthy kids. And of course in our group, yes, he had a big house, which was great to film in. But that was, I think, my first like video project, because the thing I did at the studio was the first thing I really worked on video wise, but this project was the first similar to what I do now thing that I ever did was going into the premise that Ms. Davies said we were learning about nature and resources or something about survival. I forget what the fuck it was. Oh yes, survival, because she was obsessed with Survivor and that show just started airing, and so we were trying to integrate it into our curriculum. And so she said everyone has to make a video where they get stranded in the middle of nowhere. They get stranded and they have to use science to to find their way back to civilization, right? And that was we had to make a movie about that. And some people got so creative, and I want to say I did too. But to be honest, I just really, once we started filming it, you just
ran away. You're like, okay, I'm on an island, but then robots come, and I would fuck them all.
I really wanted to get. I remember wanting it to be funny. Like I wanted it to be, and I don't want to throw my partner under the bus because he was a really good friend of mine, but his family was a little more on the conservative side. And I remember like most of the ideas I had were way too raunchy, and I either didn't ask him or I would ask him, and they'd be like, let's not do that. Let's keep it pertaining.
He's like halfway through the scene, and you're like, and then take off your pants.
Right.
And then here's the blood.
Blood, and there's blood. No, but like, I was like, guys, Ms. Davies is the kind of teacher who just wants something entertaining to watch. She just wants us to see a bunch of kids make fucking weird movies. That's what she's gonna grade it on how happy she was watching this shit, not how fucking scientific it was.
That's true.
Anyways.
How that's a great point. Right. All those videos are basically graded mostly on like number one criteria is did the teacher have a good time watching it?
Yeah.
And number two is like, oh yeah, was it accurate or something?
Yeah, that was a class where I remember the popular kids really soared.
Right.
Yeah. I want to really quick, speaking of, a lot of my schooling really did play a big might have played like almost all of the impact that made me into a YouTuber because
Formative years.
They're very formative. Like everything that I attribute to why I do it on YouTube really ultimately funnels back to my education in the public school system and in my college. But I want to say, while we're on something, I want to give a shout out to, and God knows where he is today, but his name was Mr. Howell, and he was a very, very influential guy. He was a guy who always kind of like told me that he was a video teacher, worked at Livermore High.
Okay.
Very, very sweet guy. He always told me that the stuff that I made in his class was entertaining and very, very pleasing to watch. He said he liked the shots that I was getting. And he was the first time I felt like, I can film my own stuff. I can do this, you know?
Right. When you get someone who, I mean, even though he was a teacher, like someone who didn't have to encourage you.
Right.
Had no other obligation. Just was like, hey, I want to tell you that was good.
Mr. Howell, he you know, one of my projects, if you look hard enough, and you got to really look hard because I've dug and dug and dug for this, and occasionally I'll find it if I'm lucky, but it's somewhere in the recesses of YouTube. But my final for that class is on YouTube somewhere. It's a 30-minute film that I made called I Have a Robot. I made it with four friends. It was a group project. And this was arguably the first like big project I worked on. It took us, I want to say altogether, it took us like a week to shoot it. And it was my friends and I would just, after school, we would go to either like one of our mom's houses and put our heads together and think like, all right, this is what's going to happen in this scene. Let's just shoot it. And you could tell we half-assed and had fun the entire time, but it was a big deal to us that we had something that was like a complete film. And, nice. Yeah, that I think that kind of started me thinking in the direction of like, oh, how else can I pursue this? And that's actually, ironically, that was the same year that YouTube came out. And so like it was really revolutionary time for us because we were really getting into filmmaking, and then YouTube starts to exist, and you're like, fuck, oh my God, we can do whatever.
A platform.
The elements were just right, you know. It's like the Chernobyl disaster, like just things lined up, and I think inevitably I was going to work in video one way or another. I think you as well. I think you sound like you knew very early on this is what you wanted. I think so.
It's like, as I was mentioning, it's like when you look back on it, the signs were all there, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know what other timelines it could have taken for me to realize that, and what amount of change would have, like how, I don't know how different my middle school years and high school years would have had to have been for me to have not pursued that. Right. I just don't know. But like, maybe if my family had been like murdered or something, I'd be like, I'm going to be a detective.
Wow, this really directly correlates with last week's topic.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, what would have happened if I did?
With respect to that, it does seem to make sense, because it's like, wow, that was always my favorite thing to do. And specifically, like, I enjoyed theater a lot, but I definitely enjoyed film because you could kind of craft it in private. You know, to a large degree. But one thing, I remember when I was in 10th grade, I made a film for a drama class, and it was a big project and involved a lot of people, and it was a horror film, and it was like pretty expansive. And I had this great creepy house with like 5 floors. And the family that lived in just this one bottom floor, but was like into it. It was like cool, and a bunch of cool theater kids were helping me with this.
That sounds like so much fun.
But I also had some other theater kids that were like less into it. And then I remember like got really far into making it, and then was supposed to shoot like the scene with these 2 people, and they just like didn't show up. And I called them like, where are you? Like, it's your scene today. You said you were coming, and they just ghosted me that day after confirming in the day. And then we're just like, oh yeah, my parents said I can't. And I was like, bullshit. But people just like dropped out, and
that sucks.
And not even
that's the
really
worst
trying to,
feeling.
I know it sucked, but it and I'm not trying to judge them too hard for that.
No, but that's I've had that, and that sucks having that happen.
It definitely does,
because your day is trashed,
and it makes you realize this like interesting balance of like crafting film can be a very private experience, and like I love how you make it and it's ready and it goes out after it's complete, rather than like theater where it kind of all happens live. But then you also have this other thing where it's like you have to rely on other people. Like it is a collaborative art. That's just it. You can't like.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a medium in which
if you do it all yourself, like it can only be a certain thing. If you to have it expanded, like
I've tried, I really have. For many years, I tried doing stuff all by myself, and I still to this day have trouble sometimes delegating things in a production off to other people to do. Like I don't need to focus on this. Someone else can. I'm so used to trying to do everything myself. I did a project that was an animated project called Wendell and Wayne. I did it back in 2010, and that's a really good example of me trying to wear as many hats as possible. Like I had my brother help me with some of the animation. I had a friend help me with the music. I had one other friend help me with. It was maybe like 4 of us total who worked on that whole thing. And I tried making it to the scale of like a full-blown animation with like this, big score and everything. And what ended up happening was I'm still proud of how it came out, but I think it would have come out a lot better if I leaned on a few more people and I just used a few more people to work with. And I've always been kind of scared of that because, a lot of people will say that they'll want to work with you. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's in theory, it does sound fun to make a video. And I think I'm sure you've experienced this in the past, but it's easy for someone to agree like, yeah, let's do it. It'll be fun. And then you get there and halfway through the day or even before the day starts in that case, where they didn't even show up. It's like, oh, people realize like it is work. Like, yes, it's fun to make a video and it is, it's gratifying. It's fucking amazing to see, the views go up and the comments and the likes, and it's a wonderful feeling to feel your work pay off, but it is work at the end of the day. I feel like a douchebag when I go home to my family and they say, how is everything? And I go, I can't say like, I'm stressed about this because then it's like, they see me as, well, you work in entertainment. What could possibly stress you out? You have a fun job. You're the ice cream man. Well, you know what? The ice cream man has to fill up his tank and he's got to pay bills too. And he's got his own stresses, even though he rolls around in a fucking truck of joy.
And we're not going to be explicit, but something bad happened in a couple of these batches, and he's got to deal with that. So
and he's got to deal with that. Oh no! How open ended.
But yeah, and I think I think that's one of the like challenges and kind of good aspects about it is that you get put in touch with the fact that you have to lean on people, and that's just like a life truth. So that's a helpful thing to learn, even though it's like an immediate inconvenience.
But I think I know. I think when you learn to lean on people, like this last project that I'm working on with a lot of really good. I have a really great crew, and I think that this is the most I've leaned into the. This is the least
I agree with that.
And it wasn't easy. I really had to learn. It's like just letting go and trusting that they're going to handle this. I just recently had Morgan and Sujan handle the schedule for the finale. And that was a huge anxiety for me to just let them do that. But they did a great job and they handled it and they got it all sorted out. And, but it was so scary because just so you guys know, the any production, I've learned this much at least. Almost every production, the bigger and more complicated it is, the more you're juggling. You have to have the stars align essentially between people and places.
You'd be surprised how important good scheduling is. It's everything.
Because let's say, like for instance, I have a scene that we're shooting in a few days where it's like 7 or 8 people, and these are all different actors with either day jobs or acting gigs. Everyone in LA has a very, very busy schedule if they're working in a different schedule. No one has the. It's not like in like where I'm from, where it's like, after generally 6 p.m. everyone's kind of free.
Right. This person's Monday through Friday. This person's weekends only. This person's
evenings only. This person is evenings and mornings. This person Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's like so you have to get everyone's schedules down. Okay, great. Now find a day where everyone lines up. Great. All these actors can. And this has been something I've been doing since theater class. I mean, it's what I'm trying to say is, all projects are like this. And then you hopefully once you get all the cast aligned, you better hope to God your location hasn't been rented out and you can't hold the location unless you probably make a down payment, which is often very pricey. So the locations are usually the last people I contact because for all sakes and purposes, they're more replaceable than the actors. So the actors come first, obviously the crew first because we can't shoot anything without the crew. So I have to make sure the crew is free that day. Then I have to make sure the actors are free. Then I have to make sure the locations. And so this is a big task to just hand off to anyone. And I remember even back when I did theater class, it's something that hasn't gotten any harder or any easier. It's something that's just kind of equally stressful because I've always handled it on my own. I've always, or not like I've handled the whole, but I've pretty much ultimately I've always liked holding on to contacting the actors myself. I've always tried to. So this was the first project where I've just totally been hands off the wheel, and I wish, like, looking back, that I had let go more in the past. I wish that I had I feel like if I had let go and leaned on the help of other people more in the past, I would have I shouldn't say that. I would have either shot more or created more content by now, or I would have done bigger and better bits of content by now. I think that I feel like I would be in a better place if I had learned to lean on the crew more sooner and not try to do everything on my own.
Right. It's because there are many aspects to making it, some are production and some are more creative oriented.
Right.
There's plenty of logistics. Talking about how you could have done more on one side of it had you let other aspects been handled. Mm-hmm. How do you feel your creative role has expanded since you started?
I think my and this is going to sound real. This sounds really self-absorbed, but I think that my palette for what is funny, or what is at least what's going to go well at the beginning of a video, and how a good way to end a video, like what people are going to like to see rhythmically when they watch a video. I think that I know more what people want in the sense of just what feels good. I mean, since I've started making YouTube videos, I've watched a fuckload of TV, and I know what I love out of TV. Like, I know what I think feels like a good cliffhanger to me. I think that I've tried incorporating a lot of what I enjoy from film and television into my own work, and I read the comments and I see certain things that people enjoy, certain things that people don't enjoy as much, and I fine tune what I make to make the people watching it feel as much like how I feel when I am impressed with TV as possible. Mm-hmm. So I think, just my overall sense of, I think they'll like this, and then being more right than wrong has been more refined since I've started doing YouTube. I think when I first started doing YouTube, I had no concept of what people really liked. I had a concept of what I thought they'd like,
and that was much more based on what you liked than anything else. That's interesting. That kind of leads into my next question, which is, how has your relationship with the audience changed?
My relationship with the audience has.
It's obviously gotten bigger, and there are some ramifications just to size. Yeah. But the relationship you're talking about, where you understand, you're getting feedback.
I think I've always had. I've always had the nicest audience. They've always been very loving and and I've always known that. But I think when I went on the tour, actually, the first time I really was face to face with my audience was when I was at VidCon of, oh God, Jonathan, I don't know if you remember, what year was that?
Let's not talk about it. You were at VidCon.
Yeah, it was a VidCon. I forget which year.
2015.
2000 something. But I remember that was the first time I had been met with a mob of fans face to face, and that was the first time I had felt what in-person fan love. Actually, no, I take that back. My first time was when it was a 420, and I went to Griffith Park. It was right after we shot A Day at the Park. I did a fan meetup at Griffith Park. It was on 420, and I want to say about 30 people showed up to that.
Nice.
And that was maybe more. I can't remember. Maybe less. I honestly can't recall.
It was less.
I think it might have been less.
No idea.
But anyways, that was the first time and then the VidCon, then that was the second, and then that was a huge mob of people there. And then I went on tour, and this last year, and that really kind of cemented the way I feel about my fans. Being on tour, seeing so many different versions of my fans. I saw my Dallas fans and my New York fans. I've seen my London fans. I've seen seeing all the
Philly
different
fans.
All the Philly fans. Oh my!
Just kidding.
No, I just seeing all of the different versions of people who like my stuff, and just being met with all the different versions of hospitality depending on where they were in the country. There was a difference between Florida hospitality and a difference between Arizona hospitality. There wasn't a city that I hated. There wasn't I actually loved all of the people that I met everywhere I went. Seeing how people were they treated me almost like a relative coming home after being gone for a long time. It was I was just met with open arms. People were giving me, they would come to my show giving me food and joints. They were making me gifts. And it felt I tried leaning away from the idea of like, oh, I feel like, oh, look at me. I have gifts being given. I'm a king. Oh, like people I feel like could absorb it that way and let it get to their head. But I look at it and I really just tried seeing it for what it was, which is like just love in abundance. You know, you go home to your family and they cook for you and they're so happy to see you. And I felt like I just sort of was absorbing it more in that avenue, like absorbing it more in the sense of like, there's a communal sense of love here and love among each other. Like people were making friends with each other when they were in line, and they would get to the front of the line and they had built like a friendship. But you know, and a lot of them, right. Well, I think the longest line we had was like 3 hours long, and the people who were at the end of that line like knew each other front to back by the end of it. And that was cool to see too, because it was just like a general overarching or overall sense of.
It's so strange to be the shared interest. It's for a connection between people.
I think I like to think that by shared interest, I think that people who come to those shows or who watch the channel, I think it's more of just an interest in that kind of humor, almost like, you know, when we watch football, we like it because we like the sport. And also maybe some of us like, you know, just the idea of gathering together for something really exciting and exhilarating, and we get to cheer for something. And I think that when people, and I could be speaking on my ass, but I think that when people come together and they, you know, make friends at a show like that, I think it's that they just have this mutual, almost like an earnest appreciation for that sense of humor, not necessarily the sense that it's like, I'm very happy to be the one distributing, but I think it's overall like just such a distinct form of humor that like I love Family Guy. Obviously Seth MacFarlane is insanely funny, but I love Family Guy because I love that kind of humor. I love that kind of pacing. I love, you know, so I don't know. I like to think anyways, I think I answered that question.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your sense of humor, how has your sense of humor and consequently your work changed over the years, do you think?
How's my sense? I think my sense of, I think the more people I meet, the more aware I am of like, okay, don't make that joke anymore. Like my sense of humor way back in the day was way more, like I was obviously like when I was a teenager, I grew up in a very, very conservative, in a very conservative bubble of people. And, I think back on the jokes that were just acceptable to be made around where I grew up. And it's like, like I hate the fact that a lot of that shaped my humor. And it's like after I moved to LA, I really had to learn like what is clever humor and what was just like small town like racism, or what was just small town like homophobia, or what was small town ideas that you've been instilled to like this is clever. No, it's like LA has really taught me like it's taught me the do's and don'ts of I don't know the dude. I don't want to say that I am all knowing of, oh yes, this is to be done and this is not, but it's certainly put in perspective. Like this is what you sound like when you make that kind of joke, you know, cause I'll go back home now and I'll hear my friends and family make jokes and it's like stuff I wouldn't say now, but I know that if I still lived there, I don't know if I'd necessarily join in and say it with them, but I would definitely like laugh along and not think about it if it was like, you know, 10 years ago when I was back in Livermore.
Right. It's so, like every joke has a premise. And if you come from a different cultural premise, then you're making different jokes.
And it just makes me like almost like really uncomfortable now. Yeah. I'm back.
I know exactly what you mean.
I go back home and I'm like, oh my God, I don't remember you guys being this offensive. And I have a channel where half my videos are called offensive at the end of it. And like, I think that some of this is offensive. And it's like, these are the people who raised me and who are not, I shouldn't say, I mean, the people who I grew up with and the people that I, you know, who helped shape me, you know, but, I don't know. I think that ultimately, I think
it sounds like you're becoming a bigger person.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I think understanding,
I actually do mean that.
I think understanding what makes someone laugh and focusing on that rather than what's the most offensive thing I can do is such a,
it's like at first you're coming more immediately from a small town like that. Your initial instinct and your initial drive is to push against all that. And now essentially you've done that and you're searching for a larger meaning, you know, something beyond that. Like, well, check, I've pushed back against everything Livermore constrained in my life. And now I have the freedom to push back against what? And
right. It is weird. I feel like part of me almost gets off on being a rebel.
Yeah, and you should. I think that's I think that's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely liked,
but it's like a new experience to be like, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next thing that's oppressive and wrong? You know,
that is why yeah, right. What's the next thing that'll push buttons? It is fun to kind of push buttons. I think that I like pushing buttons because I also like I abide by the rules when I absolutely have to, and I know how to abide by the rules. I think that. I don't know. I think I think if you understand rules and social norms, it's fun to sort of break them, or it's more fun you understand the weight of breaking them.
You're just like, why though?
Yeah. When I first started making, I think after the first film that I made after high school was called Government Hero Boys, and it's nowhere to be found. It is absolutely nowhere to be. I think everyone who was involved in this film
has been shot.
We have all agreed unanimously that this does not ever go out. Like it's kind of like our Pennywise, that we just make sure like we're going to come back in 27 years, and if it's still alive, we will kill it. I think. Looking back on it, it was the first time I worked with a director. It wasn't something that I shot myself. It was something someone else did. But he had a lot of the actors in Livermore, because Livermore is a small town. If you're an actor, you knew most of the other actors in that town.
Right.
And pretty much all the main actors of Livermore were in this film. So it was the film to be in if you were in Government Hero Boys, and it was shot... I'm going to throw him under the bus by Casey DeFremery. I don't know if that's throwing him under the bus. He might like the plug. I don't know. Anyways, he was the first cameraman that I ever had, first film person I ever worked with, and this is 2005, 2006, something like that. And it was a film where like me and my friend Nathan were buddy cops. And there's a scene where I'm oh my God, it was so awkward. There's a scene where I'm having to get a blowjob from Nathan's actual real life sister, and we're shooting it, and I'm just like, and like I'm, by the way, not out yet, so I'm like, oh, they think I like it, no, they think I want the, like, I don't know, like I'm like, oh, I'm trying to pretend like, oh yes, oh, she's amazing. And it was just awkward. And then there's just scenes, and then just aside from that moment, there's just so many moments in the whole film that were just so cringy. The fight scenes that just didn't line up well, the continuity errors up the ass, and just the worst acting. Because I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone else, but my acting in this film was garbage. It was horrible. And so I think he found a copy of it a couple years ago, and he sent us a private link to it. And I think we all watched it. No one posted about it. No one, but like it was nowhere to be found. I think we all kind of we just agree. None of us made this film.
You make enough stuff, you're gonna make stuff that you feel that way about.
It's so bad. I almost regret talking about it on here because now I feel like I don't know.
You know what? It's good. It's good.
It's good. Yeah. Don't bother looking it up. But anyways, yeah. Casey and I went on to do a lot of short films together, many of which aren't on YouTube anymore. We went on to do. There's this one called Today I Jump, where I play a guy about to commit suicide off the ledge of a building. It was very beautifully shot. It was one of the first films I ever made where Casey and I and Nathan, the co-star, we all looked at it afterward when we edited it. And said, it looks beautiful. Like we all looked at it thinking like, this is the most cinematic thing we've made. And that's when it was like 2007. That's when I first started trying to make things look cinematic and make things look nice. And I stood up on the ledge of a building. I was actually on like the edge of it was a 3-story parking structure, and my feet were like right on the edge, and someone in the street down below started screaming, "Jump." And I was like, wow, that's fucked up. And we're trying to film. They're like, "Jump." And I just started looking for something to throw at them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up. And then I was able to talk my co-star, because the whole movie, if I remember correctly, was about this guy who's about to jump and this other guy's about to jump, and they're arguing like, who's gonna like, this is my spot. I was here first. No, this is my spot. Blah 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 blah. And like the whole thing was them like arguing like who's gonna who has to walk to the other side of the building and jump, and they want this side because his girlfriend's down there, and I want this side because my boss is down there, whatever.
Wow.
Eventually, he talks the guy off, and you find out at the end of the film that the second guy who came up there was a cop. and talked him off like that. Or no, he talks him. He basically, throughout the whole film, you think that his life is just horrible. He's like, yeah, this happened to me and this happened. And he just did the research on the first guy and just took all of his problems and made him slightly worse and had this whole narrative where he just made this slightly worse version. And the first guy was like, oh, wow, you do have it worse. And then he ends up not jumping. And then he goes, well, what about you? And he goes, just let me be. This is the best thing that could happen to me. And you think guy number 2 is going to jump off the building. Now that and at the end, he goes into the walkie-talkie and he goes, all right, he's on his way down, boys, or something like that.
Like, beat his ass.
Right. But now that I'm thinking about it, and the soundtrack was really good. It was copyrighted, of course, because, that wasn't even a concern of mine back then. But it was just I think that's why it doesn't exist on YouTube anymore. My acting was shit.
Like, Clint Mansell did a lot of it. Howard Shore did the rest.
Yeah, that was bad. I do miss the time that time when I could just use whatever music I wanted. I like this song. I'm going to throw that in. There's no consequence.
Yeah.
And anyways, so we did a lot of films.
It's just a video for your family.
Right.
Like, you can use any kind of material you want for them.
And I think out of all of this, once I started learning,
that's a really good concept, by the way.
It was a very
I have to see
nice
it for a final opinion.
It was
horrible.
I was wearing a wig in it because I didn't like my haircut, but the wig looked really fake. It was just all around. It was a bad piece. It was like all dubbed because it was really windy that day and we couldn't get audio, so it was all dubbed, and it was just obviously dubbed. It's just so bad.
Wow.
But I think, yeah. Looking back,
okay, great start though.
Great start, yeah. And then all those led up to me feeling confident enough to do a series like Theater Class. We did Theater Class, and that led to XYZ, and then Magic Funhouse, and so and so on and so forth. Magic Funhouse was a huge point in which it was like, wow, what a long way.
Yeah. It was like you had your biggest crew, you had your largest budget, most to coordinate. Lots of stuff for that one.
But you know what? I'm glad that experience. I don't know.
You had me so smooth as hell.
Yeah, that's where Jonathan and I met. For those of you who don't know, I mean, we met on the set of Magic. Well, we had pre-production Magic Funhouse season 1, and that was that project. Both those seasons taught me, or just working on that show, period, taught me how to work in this totally foreign system, but also a very commonly used system. This is how movies are made. This is how TV shows in Hollywood are made. And even though they weren't like how I shot my stuff, it was like boot camp. Like, not just filmmaking boot camp that you pay lots of money to, and you have someone who probably didn't make it give you a crash course on what they think it takes to be a filmmaker. No, this was boot camp in the sense of you got to learn how to sell to networks, and you got to learn how to write a pitch and come up with a script that, XYZ. You got to learn how to sell another season. You got to learn how to work with actors when they're running, an hour behind. And there's other. It just taught me a lot about block shooting and just working in a way that kept a crew of another 100 people running efficiently as well.
Right.
And every other project that I've been a part of that's a professional, big project is run like how Magic Funhouse is ran quite traditionally. And so it at least showed me how, so if I ever, whatever in the future comes my way, I'm not foreign to like, oh, well, this is how it's best for this will make it a lot easier if we do it this way, with this format. Right.
It's interesting. And that the whole method can be scaled up, like you block shoot something so that you can do it efficiently. Like reorganizing something with a $600 budget can cost you an extra $200 and bummer. But if that 600 is 600 million and it's an extra 200 million, no fucking way.
Right. I also realized, as a director, just little things that make the job so much easier. Like, while you're in Video Village, having a tray with assorted candies, a coffee, and a megaphone nearby you make so many things easier. I kind of learned that. I learned that, I think,
not least of all pooping.
I don't know if I actually told this on season 2. I started using a megaphone. Did I tell you that?
Talked about that a little bit.
Did we talk? I started, and I not to be like an obnoxious, typical, old school Hollywood director, but it was a point where
be honest.
I had to. Well, because I didn't like being on the walkie because a lot of the scenes I was on and off set, so I didn't like having I didn't have an earpiece in and I didn't have a walkie on me because I would just lose the walkie-talkie if I had it on me, but I wouldn't lose a megaphone because I kept it at my chair. So whenever I wanted something that or if I needed to talk to, Cody way in the other room, or if I, while he's, it just made it so much easier to use a megaphone. And I started using, and every day I brought it to set and I would just shout things.
The megaphone?
The one I use for Helen, yeah.
Wow.
And it's quite, and you know, obviously for the majority of you who haven't heard it in person, it is very, very loud. But it would make everyone be quiet. I would only have to say things once, and everyone would hear it. And so I'd be like, "Let's do it again." And I wouldn't have to scream. I wouldn't have to shout. I'd save my voice. It just did so many wonders. Although it made me look like a douche director, just shouting things into this bullhorn. But yeah, and then of course the assorted snacks. I learned that Mike and Ike's and almonds in a cup make a very good companion when you're in Video Village. It's actually it's a great texture combination.
I see that, but
it's amazing.
Go on. Because
the Mike and Ike's, you have this you have a gummy, almost like a jellyish texture on the inside, right? It's not quite a gummy candy. It's sort of almost like a sticky jelly, and then you have the almonds, so it's like this crunchy, slivery, nutty. And then you get the Mike and Ike's, the almonds, and you eat them. And you can Mike and Ike's with any nuts, really. Mike and Ike's with peanuts. Mike and Ike's.
Yeah, but my experience of Mike and Ike's, everyone's is obviously so smooth that like throwing an almond in there seems like fucking nuts in your poop. You know what I mean?
Well, you just got to think of it as like we like granola bars. There's several textures in there. It's kind of if you like a granola bar, it's kind of like that, I suppose.
I don't know why, but I think I just got grossed out like 5 seconds later by my own imagery. I'm like, wait a minute, granola bars aren't disgusting. I just had a shake. For those of you who couldn't feel that in my voice.
I think that those were really good. But then you're not going to like this next part thing because I started adding stuff to it. I started, and it was just in a coffee cup, right? I'd scoop these out because, and you're supposed to use the spoon, but I just use the cup and I just scoop them and scoop. And it's my show, so
everyone's like,
I just started. By the way, for
first the megaphone and now this.
Yeah, right. So I would have just these cups of just a candy because I started throwing Swedish Fish in there. I started throwing M&Ms in there. We had a very extensive crafty table. It was a lot of snacks that were just for everyone's consumption all day long. Yeah. And I just pile them all up in this fucking cup, and I'd sit at my director's chair, and I would just snack away while I watched people act. I would just be like, I would just sit with my megaphone. All right, now do that again, but say it quicker. All right, and then I'd just eat more candy and watch them do it again. All right, cut. That was good.
That's funny.
That was. I feel like Arlo started to rub off on me during that series.
Yeah.
He was an easy character to lean to sort of absorb into because it's easy to lean into being a tyrannical child when you're a director because sets can often be a crazy place, and so it's easy to want to be like a crybaby when you're running everything.
Yeah,
and so it's luckily I'm
you did a great job.
And here we are wrapping up Blame the Hero. Look at this and on to other projects. Yeah. I'm excited for what the future holds.
Yeah. So obviously Blame finishing up here. That's amazing.
What a weird show this is. Blame almost feels like it didn't happen. Like I here I am at the end of it, and it almost feels like wow.
Well, you're like 95% done. It's almost there.
95. Yeah, we just shot a few days ago the last scene of it. Well, I take that back. The last shot that you see in the series, right before it cuts to the credits, we shot that the very first week of shooting. It was during episode 1.
Yeah, and
we knew very early on exactly how it was going to end, and that I'm really excited about because I've never had a project really be full. I guess Magic Funhouse. Magic Funhouse was similar because Magic Funhouse, we shot the ending of that, but that was different because we had to have the whole story completed before we went into production. Mm-hmm. With this, it was the first where I'm like, it should end like this, and I actually committed to because sometimes I'll change it up or I'll think of a better ending or I'll think of a different ending or what. And this, I stayed true to it the entire time, and it was really gratifying to just edit it in. But yesterday we shot the scenes leading up to that moment, so. We kind of shot the last part of it yesterday, and it just hit me like, holy shit, it feels like I just shot a movie. Like all 7 episodes feel like a film, and it feels like we accomplished something that, I don't know. I'm just excited to see how people take it when it's in all set, because a lot of people are waiting to watch it, as a complete set. Mm-hmm. One of the most common comments I see is just, I'm waiting for all 7 episodes to be out before I binge it. Nice. So I'm really curious to see what people think, having seen them all back to back, because it was intended to be like a movie. If you watch all 7 episodes, there is kind of a 3-act arc to it, and there is like it's supposed to flow like a film, even though it's in 7 respective portions. Mm-hmm. And so if it, I don't know, I think going forward, I might want to do more projects like this that feel more like a movie that's divided up rather than like a 20 episode, series that are, or something. But who knows? Everything.
What?
Right. No regrets with any other previous projects, but definitely 20 episodes is a mouthful. It sounds like so little up front.
I know, but
and then you think about it, it's like a long time.
Talking about it with Paulette too is like, damn, 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever. Think some big projects take long periods of time.
I was going to say, like, how fucking what a voice of this generation to be like 6 months on this project when the average for like in Hollywood, like directors spend
like
a year
or
3 years. Exactly. Yeah. I think that we're just so used to this quick turnaround, especially with YouTube. It's like if you're not pumping out something every week, then you are lazy. And you know what I mean? Like it's like so.
More retrospective coming.
Really quick though, I just want to say while we're here, so people are going to be listening to this. It will be presumably what date is it?
Tomorrow.
What is that?
The 16th.
The 16th. Okay. So I just want to give an update on Blame the Hero because it has taken a while. Every episode had a certain amount of time between each release, and this one's taken so much longer, and it's going to be another 2.5, I think, more weeks. And the end of the month is when it's coming out. The very end of the month. And just going back to what I was saying, it's just that whole process of juggling all the different elements that need to come into play for certain days to happen. I think we have like 6 more days left of shooting, but because of schedules, they're like 6 very spread out days. It's like 1 day and then 2 days of nothing,
right.
Another shoot day and then 3 days of nothing. Just, so it's as a creator, my balls are itching. I want to like fucking shoot stuff. I want to go back to the standalone sketches. I just want to get Blame the Hero done and done well. Obviously, I'm not rushing this project, obviously, by any means.
No, you're right there. You can taste it.
Right. And honestly, the finale does, so far from what we've shot and what I've cut together, it looks so good. I'm really excited for this episode to come out and just for the series to be a complete project publicly. But overall, I'm just itching to get back to creating future videos, future sketches. Like I just miss writing new characters. I miss writing new concepts and plots. Blame the Hero has been a plot that I've had to stick to for the last X amount of months. So it's been a little while since I got to create a new plot or a new element, and I really am excited to move on. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thank everyone for being so incredibly patient. And you know what? I think I want to include some of their comments in the next episode. What should we have them chime in? I want to respond to some people because we don't really do a lot of fan interaction. I think the poop stories was the closest, and that was fun.
Oh, God loved our poop stories and our near-death experiences. Those were hilarious.
Oh, yes. Well, what kind of things should we ask of them from this time?
That's a great question. So the keys are that it has to be very embarrassing for them because we need to make fun of them.
It has to be very embarrassing.
So tell us all your most humiliating moments.
Yeah.
Anything where you were hurt, like that's good.
We can do this segment.
But you're okay.
We can start. We can integrate. Make sure you're okay. We can integrate this segment into the podcast as just general keyword. Just tell us a story that we can, but it has to be a true story. I don't want you guys lying, okay? Because I can tell through the email. I guess something we can comment on, and then maybe once we get more stories as we go on, maybe we'll start filtering them into themes or something.
Yeah.
But it would just be nice to have some sort of interaction. So if you got something you want to talk about. Something. Do you know a conspiracy? Do you know maybe one of your cousins fucking another cousin? Who knows?
Tell us about it.
You got dirt. I don't care if we don't know who they are. If you got dirt and it's good, give it to us because we're going to spread that shit on this podcast.
It's true. We get enough on one topic. I think we might try a little call-in action. And,
yes.
Just have y'all on and
that'd be fun. We could be like
some fucking questions,
like an old-fashioned radio program.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, guys. I hope you guys have had a great time this hour. I hope that you guys follow your dreams, and I hope that whatever you want to do, I guess it's important in life to understand what the pulp is of what really just makes you happy, or maybe what the juice is of what makes you happy, and get rid of all the pulp that doesn't. Whatever the metaphor you want to use, I think it's important to know what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy.
Depends on how you feel about pulp, but
depends on. I actually like the pulp. I don't mind it in orange juice. It's orange juice. I'm not trying to trick myself into thinking it's a liquid fruit.
Right.
It's a juicy ploppy fruit, and there's this pulp that comes with.
Give me that reality.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, I hope you had a great time and follow your dreams and don't forget to have fun.